The Tonight Show with Grimlock! Me Grimlock, me King. On tonight's show, we have disgraced author J.K. Rowling.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on this important issue, Grimlock. I want to speak against the Transformers, who are either born a former or not. We need to think about the rights of the formers. These Transformers coming into formers' changing rooms when they're known to be sexual predators is just out of order, and I won't stand for it.
Me Grimlock say, J.K. Rowling, stupid bitch. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, with more Tonight Show with Grimlock. So, Transformers Armada was a thing, huh? It was the first series to do a complete reboot of the franchise. Oh, but what about 2001's Robots in Disguise? I hear your high-pitched, grating voice ask. Well, I'm sure you'll know that doesn't count, as it was only a reboot for the Western dub. The original Japanese series, Car Robots, was still, somehow, in G1 continuity. So just pipe down, ya goon, and let me do the talking, alright? Along with the reboot, Armada was the first series to be created in partnership between Hasbro and Takara. The slate was wiped clean after the confusing Japanese and Western split in continuity of the Beast era, and we were reintroduced to the Autobots and Decepticons. Some names were certainly familiar. Optimus and Megatron headed their respective factions, but they both received extensive makeovers, reeking of the same early 2000s bombast that brought you Kid Rock, the Attitude Era, and invading Middle Eastern countries to steal their oil. Megatron was practically unrecognisable from his G1 self, looking like a cross between G1 Scorponok and Galactus. Optimus was still a red and blue space robot truck dad, but he was considerably more swole, especially when he combined with his trailer. The character who remained the most recognisable from his G1 design was Starscream, but he had a complete personality overhaul. Instead of being the sycophantic, snivelling, treacherous prick we all knew and loved, Starscream was surprisingly competent. He retained his dislike of Megatron, but he was given a surprisingly heroic story arc, becoming by far the standout character of the series. Other characters like Red Alert and Cyclonus were unrecognisable from their G1 depictions, whilst others like Bumblebee, Hot Rod, Mix-Up, Hotshot were entirely new creations. This blend of the familiar with the new was definitely a bit trippy. This wasn't helped at all by the amount of psychedelics I was consuming at the time. The main MacGuffin of the series were the Minicons. These tiny Transformers were presented as a third faction, separate from the Autobots and Decepticons. The Minicons possessed great power that could be harnessed by the larger Transformers with the act of power linking. Basically, Autobots and Decepticons would just slap on a Minicon like a fancy fashion accessory. Naturally, the dastardly Decepticons sought to enslave the Minicons to harness this power to defeat the Autobots. To avoid this fate, the Minicons fled Cybertron before ultimately crash landing on Earth and becoming dormant. That was until some particularly annoying kids accidentally reactivated them, sending out a beacon across the galaxy that alerted the Autobots and Decepticons, who then brought their battle to Earth. So, the only question that really matters is, was Transformers Armada any good? Well, no, not really. Due to a rush schedule getting the series to television, corners were cut in terms of animation, scripting and dubbing, making the early episodes of the show quite painful to watch. I know this because I rewatched the whole bloody thing before this review. I prayed for Megatron to squish those stupid snivelling kids every second they were on screen. As the series went on, things definitely started to pick up, with some truly memorable storylines and characters. Sideways was a pretty spooky sausage, and I enjoyed Wheeljack's sad story of abandonment and eventual redemption, even though Wheeljack looked exactly like Sideswipe. Well, Sideswipe didn't look like Sideswipe, which was very confusing, honestly. Shit got real when Unicron turned up, with the climax of the show reminding me of the ending of the Marvel comic. You really can't go wrong with a massive planet-sized robotic Satan fella smashing stuff. The final battle between Optimus and Megatron was also absolutely fucking epic. Anyway, shall we have a look at some toys? Have a look at these edgelords, brought to you by the current Legacy toy line. They certainly look the part, huh? Let's start with Starscream. This boy is looking pretty spot on to his depiction in the show, with these massive turbine things on either side of his head. I've always imagined these would be quite awkward to deal with, due to how much they stick out of the back. Tight corridors must be a nightmare. Thankfully, these can be folded flat against Starscream's back for a less accurate but more practical look. This head sculpt is pretty much perfect, with these weirdly orange eyes and adorable chin strap. It also has a great range of movement in the ball joint, although this is very much hampered by the turbines. Seriously, these things must be a nightmare to deal with. Starscream has zero peripheral vision, but a character as gloriously camped as he is would certainly prefer a fabulous look over functionality. You can even flip out these massive blasters from the turbines. Fucking slay queen! Articulation in Starscream is pretty standard for your average modern mainline figure. The only noticeable exception would be a lack of wrist swivel, and due to how the nose cone pegs into his chest, no usable waist swivel. I mean, if you don't plug in the nose cone, there is a swivel there, but it looks quite vulgar with his nose cone ding-dong just flopping off to the side. The lack of wrist swivel is unfortunate, as it hampers Starscream's ability to wield these two swords he comes packaged with. There's this big old bludgeoning chib, and the legendary Star Saber. Oof, this is just some hot garbage right here. The Star Saber looks like a cheap child's toy from Poundland. The whole concept of a sword made from three planes is a bit ridiculous in the first place. If 9/11 taught us anything, it's that planes don't really perform that well as reusable cutting items. Anyway, robot mode in Armada Starscream is pretty excellent all round. He looks like the character and has decent articulation. He does feel a bit cheap though, in a kind of intangible way, especially when compared to the excellent Legacy Cybertron Starscream. He's definitely better than the bloody Earthrise mold at least. Transformation is pleasantly simple. The way the legs work is rather ingenious, with these gap fillers combining underneath the jet to hold everything together. This is definitely what it's meant to be, a futuristic jet type thing. It's pretty good if you like that thing, which I do, so that's fortunate I suppose. I'd say there's a fair to decent swooshability here. The only slight gripe I have is that the nose cone doesn't hold in that securely and it droops down a touch. Nobody likes a floppy nose cone. Perhaps Starscream is in need of some Cybertronian Viagra. Let's move on to New Metal Bumblebee Hotshot. Robot mode is looking pretty cute and dinky. I really like these huge shoulder pads in this McDonald's coloured Bumbleboy. You might even say, I'm loving it. McDonald's, you get it? Fuck you then. The shoulder pads definitely make Hotshot look more imposing. But again, he's got zero peripheral vision, even with his binocular headband thing. Speaking of gimmicks, Hotshot's rear axle can be folded up and over his wee round head and used as a big cannon. That's fun. Hotshot's chest design has always bothered me a touch. I mean, there's not much vehicle integration here at all, like your typical carbots tend to have. It's as if Hotshot is actually a skinny fella in red long johns, wearing a silver bandolier, a yellow helmet, shoulder pads and knee-high boots. This toy does definitely capture that mental aesthetic, but I still find it a bit odd. It's just like something a early 90s wrestler would wear, like a McDonald's themed Max Moon. Just like me, problems start to arise when you go below Hotshot's waist. These legs are a bit of a riot. Look at these hollow calves and all this car kibble hanging out here. If he's not storing it on his twinkish torso, I guess it has to go somewhere. This means that Hotshot's knee bend is pretty terrible, unless you swing the car parts out of the way, and that looks pretty fucking messy. This would definitely be called crafty on Drag Race. Hotshot makes up for these shortcomings by having an alt mode that's just as cute as a button. I love this fat wee yellow sports car. It's so wide and chunky, with these out of proportion tiny wheels. It very much reminds me of a obese Pikachu with tiny wee leggies. The yellow colour matching here is actually done well, unlike Studio Series 86 Bumblebee. I also really enjoy how Hotshot's blaster pegs in to be this engine block. That's great weapon integration. There's a nub on the back of the car intended to plug in a Minicon, but you don't get a Minicon with Hotshot. If you want his Minicon, you're going to have to buy the Legacy Evolution repaint of this guy, and no one likes Hotshot enough to have two of them, so just forget it. Let's move on to everyone's favourite fascist dictator space robot Hitler himself, Megatron. This fella be chunky. I love the heft of this guy. He feels so solid and sturdy in hand, just like your mum. I really like the green and purple colour scheme he's rocking, but being a filthy G1er, this doesn't really feel like my Megatron. I naturally associate this green, purple and orange colour scheme with the massive Decepticon bastard Scorponok. Only instead of having claws for hands, he's got a claw on his head. This isn't really a criticism against the toy, just my own prejudice of course. If this is your Megatron, fair enough pal. What I can criticise is the fact that Megatron's antlers fall off with the slightest nudge. This is very annoying, especially since they're not the easiest thing to peg back in. Do yourself a favour and just super glue these fuckers on. Apart from that small gripe, this fella is pretty smashing to be honest. With his clicky ratchet joints and simple but satisfying transformation, Megatron feels a lot like one of the Studio Series 86 Dinobots. That's high praise indeed. With these huge shoulder treads though, again Megatron has zero peripheral vision. What is it about Armada characters being able to look side to side? I love this posable turret on Megatron's back, which can be positioned in front or in the back to match your preference. Unfortunately, the rotation on the turret has been locked off, so you can't give Megatron a Mega Dong, which is quite unfortunate. Megatron doesn't really come with many accessories, just his tank barrel, which you shouldn't really consider an accessory in the first place. You can peg it into Megatron's wrist if you're bored, then take it out again. I know you don't have anything better to do with your time, eh? Overall, this is a quality robot mode. Great articulation, strong shelf presence, and fun to mess about with. I'd say this was the best Megatron in my collection if he, actually looked like Megatron. This tank mode is pretty quality as well. It's nice and hefty. I've seen folk criticise this guy for not having the gimmicks the original toy had, and whilst that is a shame, I'd trade any bloody action feature for usable knees. I like my children's toys to at least pretend they're classy adult collectibles, so I'm not the biggest fan of lights and sounds anyways. Megatron really seemed to be a bit of a shelf warmer in the UK, as I got mine for the princely sum of $15 at game. I'd heartily recommend this tyrannical despot, so don't miss out on him, or pick up the Galvatron repaint. I certainly won't be. It's the same bloody toy and colours he was in for about 10 minutes in the show. I think I can live without it. So, on to the main event of the evening. This, my friends, is Commander Class Armada Optimus, and he's a bloody belter. Let's start off with his standard robot mode. This Prime is swole. He gives Gamer Edition Optimus a run for his steroid-infused money. This Optimus looks like he's had mad gains since G1. I love his truck grille monotip. This surely is much more battle effective than having easily smashable window tits. This manly look is slightly offset by Optimus's fetching miniskirt. Well, it is 2024, and I'm all for gender fluidity, so you do you, doll. Despite his beef, Optimus is also a bit short when stacked up against Megatron. I wonder if there's anything we can do about that. Anyways, these arm-mounted smokestacks are absolutely badass. It hardly seems necessary for Prime to have any additional weaponry, but he also comes with this massive ion cannon. This is more like an ion bazooka. Prime's head sculpt is looking suitably heroic and remains quite recognisable from his G1 depiction. He has yellow pissy peepers though. I know this is accurate to the original G1 toy and the Armada cartoon, but I'm not a fan. I very much prefer blue eyes, just like Hitler did. Aryan jokes. Again, this is just a personal preference, so if you're into these jaundiced looky slits, good for you, buddy. You know what else bugs me about this design? No fucking peripheral vision again. Fuck's sake. This can't be a coincidence now, can it? All these Armada fellas would be bested by a simple side-on sneak attack. How embarrassing. To make up for his lack of peripheral vision, you can at least give Optimus hand feet. I'm sure at least one of you filthy perverts will be aroused by this. Disgusting. Anyway, transformation is nice and simple, although these wee bits at the top of Prime's shoulders like to pop off every now and again. Have a look at this roided out truck and trailer. I'd hardly say this was inconspicuous. This is hardly robots in disguise. This truck is so over the top, overtly macho and flamboyant, I'd say it's more like this robot's into guys, if you know what I'm saying. I hate myself. The trailer doesn't really have any functionality in terms of storing cars or that. It's just there to look mean and tough. These treads at the back certainly look cool, but regular tyres would probably be a lot more practical and work a lot better. I really love these sticky out cubes on either side, although they would certainly cause absolute chaos if Optimus were ever to use a Scottish back road. So here we are at Optimus's super mode. What do you mean I'm forgetting about the base mode? No, you see I'm choosing to ignore it. I hate base modes. They're always pish, and this is no exception. Get it to fuck. Anyway, check out this super mode. Is this not just a big old smasher? He's bloody huge. Now Prime absolutely towers over poor Megatron. This hardly seems like a fair fight. This is like putting a toddler against Brock Lesnar. I'm not too sure in this head sculpt though. Again, we have the pissy peepers, which are also inaccurate to the red of the show. But the main thing is these ear flaps. It kind of gives Optimus a creature from the Black Lagoon vibe. It's a bit mental, but it's how it's supposed to be, I guess. Everything else here is absolutely superb. This massive sausage has all the articulation you would want, including a waist swivel, unlike the core Optimus figure. These big pants at the front are a little clumsy, and he has a lot of junk in the trunk. The butt kibble is accurate to the original design, but you can remove it if you'd like, so you do whatever you want. I'm no your dad. I actually don't mind it too much myself, and it doesn't really hinder his posing, so my Prime will keep his massive arse on. Overall, you can't help but be impressed with this big old smasher. Deco-wise, I personally think the splashes of gold are a little too ostentatious for Optimus. He's not bloody Mr. D. Admittedly, it does pop against the red, blue and grey. I still think that Ultra Magnus is the best commander class, but you really could make an argument for a Murder Optimus. With the inner robot, Op mode and super mode, there's a lot of bang for your buck here. Could he be the best mainline Optimus figure ever? Well, quite possibly. Wait, who's this? Yeah, unfortunately someone has just taken that position. Sorry, Armada Optimus. So, would I recommend these toys? If you're a fan of Transformers Armada, then these fellas are essential. For the kids of the 2000s, these designs will elicit that same intoxicating nostalgia as I feel for G1. So it's great to see these fellas being revisited. Not everything has to be G1 after all, does it? I mean, G1 objectively is the best, of course. I just saw Transformers 1 and it was great, but these folks saying it's better than the 86 movie need to take a long, hard look at themselves.
The 86 movie is the most perfect piece of art humanity have ever bestowed upon this earth. It's a definitive hero's journey, a tale of daring to be stupid in the face of despair and hopelessness, a cosmic parable that we should all look to in order to light our darkest hour. Everything else just pales in comparison. You know what? Fuck Transformers Armada. Fuck these guys. I'm G1 for life. Anyway, you guys have a great night. Catch you later.
Like, subscribe until you die. Like, subscribe until you die. Like, subscribe until you die.
Quit looking at my log, John.